Hello everybody, welcome back to Leading Our Own Way. I'm Andrew White, and if you caught part one, you'll know we're deep in the conversation with the remarkable Evelyn Lopez-Delon, a woman who is definitely redefining what it means to balance entrepreneurship and motherhood and purpose. In this second part, we're diving into the raw, unfiltered reality of what happens when life throws you on, those curveballs. I know we're all feeling, you sat there right now thinking curveballs coming in every which direction. But these curveballs, while you're trying, because it happens when you're trying to build your dreams, doesn't it? Or even just having a normal life, even. From navigating these health scares that we're going to go into with our child shortly, to the identity that shifts and that comes from within motherhood, right? Evelyn's about to share some of the most vulnerable and powerful insights I think you'll ever hear anywhere, if I'm honest. Anyway, here's Evelyn for part two. And if you've missed part one, though, and you've only just tuned in, it's already in the list waiting, so please go and give us a follow, give us a 5-star review, and check out part one. Also, quick side note, previously, her husband, Adam, has shared his journey also on the podcast, a bit of a family affair, so please go and listen to Adam. Finish this one off first. Anyway, here's part two. Enjoy. Just going back to when you were 21 years old and you started to finally unpack a few things, and I actually want to go a bit further back after that. What were some of the things that you unpacked?
Nurturing myself. So one of the main things that I remember going into was one of the counselors actually said at that point I was in relationships, one relationship to another. It was like I was feeding off love from someone else. So it was self-love that I was trying to get, because I realized there was a pattern that I was facing. It was like I was expecting that other person to love me, and when they didn't, I would just completely lash, like complete anger management. And every single boyfriend that I had was like, there's anger management problems there, what is that anger? And so that's what I was trying to work on. And the anger was that I never felt nurtured. And that was because I never was nurtured in that way. And so when I went into relationships, it was that expectation that they would fill the void that my dad never gave me, right? And so that was one of the things that we really worked on. It was like, what would you say to yourself? And I remember one time really went into, and this is when I started to do meditation, really went into the moment of, if you were to think about that moment where you're with yourself at your younger self, how old would she be? And I said 4 years old, right? Obviously, that's the time that I lost my mum. Yeah. Okay, so what are you doing with your 4-year-old self? Where are you at? I love the beach. So I said, the beach. We're at the beach. And so, okay, now think about, what is it that you'd be talking to her about? What would you be doing? Would you be hugging her? And so they took me into that moment of really being there with my younger self and nurturing her in a way that I'd never had done that before. So I started to practice that a lot. And I even had a photo of my younger self in front of my mirror. And I'd look at her and go, what would I be telling her? What would I be saying? Talking to her in a nice way, in a way that was self-love. And that's how I sort of started to self-love myself, that I didn't need that from anyone else, and that I shouldn't expect that from anyone else.
You started to live with purpose.
Yeah.
What about school then? What was those early years before you started paying the bills at 14, 15 years old? You're living a life in Australia, you're in school. What did school look like for you after losing your mother? Your dad obviously started to be present in a different way.
Yeah. Good question. I think school for me, when my mum passed away, was I actually moved schools when my stepmom came into play. So when my mum passed away, I was in one school, right? And I was in grade, I would say 1 or 2, when I then moved to a different school. But my stepmom was already in the picture. So it was almost like a clean slate. I went from one school to another, and all of a sudden, no one knew me at this new school. And I had a stepmom. So I actually went into straight away into this is my mum, this is my normal family. We have a normal family,
Yeah.
right? And so that then led to obviously not being authentic in my story, right? Because I never got told, and that's where I think speak to be seen comes into as well. Like, so that comes my purpose because I had
Makes
to wear a
sense.
mask. Yeah, so this is how it all sort of comes together.
Yeah.
I had to wear a mask for a very long time, and my stepmom was jealous of me speaking about my mum, and she would always say, "Don't cry. There's no point crying. Crying won't bring her back." And I'll remember going to the cemetery, and my whole family would go to the cemetery, but because I was the youngest one, she would pull me away and she'd be like, come over here, have a look at this and have a look at that. And, pulling me away from my own family, you know. So there was that disconnect. She was disconnecting me from my own family. So growing up, I felt disconnected from everyone, disconnected from my own family, disconnected from my mum, my own mum. I had this stepmom who was telling me how I should feel, how I should think, how I should act, that I shouldn't even spend time with my dad because he's so tired, your dad's so tired, don't bother him, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
that's how I grew up with a stepmom that really did a lot of damage in a way that made me someone else that I wasn't. And when she left when I was 12, it was a hard pill to swallow because I obviously then loved her. Like, I then became, that was my go-to person.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I felt lonely, disconnected because that one person I had that whole time that told me to just be with her kind of thing I had to then start to connect with my sister, with my brother, which was hard because they were doing their own thing as well. So my friends became my family. So then I started to go out with my friends. And, at 12, when she left, I obviously started to, head out with my friends. So at 14 years old, I was drinking, partying, Friday night, with my friends and, got up to a lot of stuff. At that point in time, my dad would drop me off at my friend's house and say, "Don't go out, make sure you don't, do this." And he obviously knew what I was up to, but he couldn't control it because he was too busy working. And so I became a party animal, went into partying every Friday night, binge drinking, relationships after relationships, and my friends became my family.
You were filling that void, weren't you? That gap that was missing, that
Yeah.
invisible gap that you weren't even probably conscious or aware of.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So coming from that teen period, then where did life take you into early adulthood?
Yeah, and love that question as well because then that leads into, going into that societal norm, even though I was, partying, drinking, all that sort of stuff, I still wanted to please my dad at some point, right?
Yeah.
My dad was like, you got to buy a house and get married and have kids and, do all the things that we're meant to do in society. And he pushed me to get to buy a house, buy a house. Like, I wish I did that. And look at us where we're at. And I worked so hard. And you now, you know, build that legacy, right? But for them, legacy meant buying a house.
Yeah.
And so I was with someone for 7 years on and off. I didn't love him, but I felt safe with him. And I didn't realize this, right? You don't realize that until you go through the motions and all that sort of stuff. And so when I was with him, he wanted to buy a house and, wanted to do all the right things. I was 23 at that point or 24. And mind you, I come from, that party, loved traveling. I had been traveling, since I was 14 years old on and off because I was working and saving and going and traveling, living the life. And then when I was 23, we decided to buy a house and to settle down. And when I bought the house, I realized the very first time where I was doing it to please my dad. Because that day that I moved in, I said, "Dad, can you come and help us move? We're moving on this day." Everything was prepared. His mum was going to come help us. My dad was going to be there, and it was all great. The day of the move-in, called my dad. "Dad, where are you?"
Oh,
"What do you
no.
mean?" And what do you mean? I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, I'm moving today. I told you about this. Oh, sorry, I completely forgot. I've got to take Sue, which was his girlfriend at that time. I've got to take her to Frankston. I've got to take her here and there, blah, blah, blah. I don't think I'm going to make it. I was fuming. That was the moment where I realized, why am I so angry? Why am I so angry? Why, like, and so he couldn't understand it. But then at that point, I was like, he's not here. And I'm doing this for him.
Yeah.
You know, have you watched Encanto? Have you watched that scene, Encanto? No, okay.
No.
There's this movie called Encanto, and it's like, obviously my girls love it and everything. But there's this scene where the girl, and it's like a Colombian family, right? And the Colombian family was trying to get her to marry another Colombian like a man and all that sort of stuff. And then the sister then ruins the whole dinner proposal. And then she gets really angry with her sister, and then she then opens up and says, I was doing it only for the family. And it was just that moment. And that's the moment that I had, was I was like, I was doing it only for my dad. And he's not here. So why am I doing this again?
So did you move in?
Yeah, I moved in. I bought a dog at that point, and because I knew I wasn't happy. I knew, I was like, why am I not happy? I've got it all. Like, I've got the good guy that treats me well. I've got the house. I've got the career. Had that happening. My career was taking off. I have everything, but why am I not happy? And I'd cry myself to sleep going, why am I not happy? Why is this not making me happy? I felt trapped. I felt like I wanted to just be free. And I've got that free spirit of me. That's the reason also why I'm doing what I'm doing as well, for that freedom-filled life. But at that point, it was like, I don't love him. And I've done this all just to please my dad. And now he's not even here, doesn't care. So why am I doing this? So then it took 9 months. 9 months. I got a dog, and I thought the dog would make me happy, right? I told my partner that a dog would, bring us together and all that sort of stuff, and it didn't. And so I'd take my dog out, and I'd cry, I'd be like, why am I not happy still? Why is this like... So I realized the happiness didn't come from things, materialistic things. It didn't come from a house. It didn't come from a career. It didn't come from... It's come from within, right? So then I decided to, leave him. And it started off by a simple conversation. Are you happy? He's like, well, I'm happy with what we've got. I'm happy with the house. So you're happy with the materialistic stuff, but are you happy with me, us? Are you in love? He's like, yeah, but we've been together for 7 years, and I'm like, yeah, but we're 23 years old.
Yeah.
Don't you want love? Like,
yeah.
I don't want this. And so, we separated, and that was my path to really finding what I really wanted from life, and led me to a lot of other different realizations. And then eventually it led me to a moment of being on my own for the first time when I was 30 years old. And again, my dad was at my ears. You're 30 years old, you're single, don't you want kids? I had to look at him and say, Dad, I don't know. I don't know if I want kids. The question isn't about wanting to have kids. The question is about finding someone that is good enough for me to have kids.
Or just to be happy first. You can be happy and still not have kids, right?
Yeah, that's right. But it's like, and that's the thing. I was like, and you know what? If I don't find that person, that's okay too. And I don't know if I'm going to have kids, because if I don't find that someone, then that's okay too. And he would say things like, you're never going to be a woman if you don't have kids.
Oh my Lord.
Right? And then I was like, no, Dad,
stop.
I'm going to be more of a woman if I choose not to bring kids into a world where it's not right. Yeah. And I gave him this whole lecture and he just closed his mouth and didn't know what to say. And from there he stopped.
Did it work? So it worked then?
It worked. I think it worked, yeah, because after that he sort of even gave up. And then when Adam came into it, he was like, oh my gosh, I never thought that, I think he had, because I kept on and again, it was one of those things, it was one of those moments where I had been through that before with him wanting that house. And I'm like, you're not going to get me to want to have kids for the wrong reasons. It's going to be on my terms. And these are the reasons why I think that. And I think that it's more woman to be a woman is to also have choices.
Yeah.
And to have those choices, it's my body, it's my life, and I'm going to choose whether or not I have kids. And if I don't, then I'm still woman enough to make that choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I completely agree. So the next stage of your life, you with Adam, and the journey doesn't end here, does it? We go through another series of, I don't know, if there's a graph here, we're going up and down, aren't we? And I feel like there's another part of your graph, let's say, that kind of goes down again, right? During difficult times around pregnancies and things like that, was it? I think I remember now. Can we touch on that part of the journey? Because I feel like if we're doing a timeline of the episode, I feel like we're at the point where you with Adam, you're in that transitional period of your career.
Yeah.
But then other things tend to come into your... Am I right? Am I getting the picture right?
Yeah, well, look, the journey between Adam and I as well, it was like a crazy journey in itself. But like, you know, when I went through that, and Adam and I actually knew each other from when we were younger, actually. So we had dated when I was like 20. I only lasted a couple of months, but then he went on his journey and I went on my journey. And then at that time, when I was 30, I started doing the work on myself and spent 3 years alone, really trying to figure out. I lived on my own as well, trying to figure out, you know, where I stood with friendships and what I wanted out of, you know, whether or not if I wanted to have kids. And again, it was those questions that came up. It was like, do I even want to have kids? Is it society that's making me want to have kids? Is it my dad that's talking out my ears to want to have kids? Or is it simple that I just don't want them? Like, is it too much responsibility? Is it too much of my childhood trauma that if I wasn't nurtured, could I nurture these babies? And I know that babies are obviously not going through they're everything, and like you've got to be emotionally ready, financially ready, or like for me anyway, for me it was just like those things that had to sort of match up. And so when I started to really work on myself and said no more guys, I'm just going to spend my time by myself and I'm just going to figure this out, I started to really dig deep into those feelings. And again, it was the same thing that I went through with the business as well. Like you dig deep into these real questions about what is the real purpose? What is the real end goal behind it? What happens if I don't have kids? What would my life look like, right? And would I be okay with that? And whether or not if I did want the kids, what would the partner actually look like? What would he be like? What would the values that he would bring to this relationship? How would we align in those values? And, you know, how would he be as a father to show up for those kids, you know, that I would have? So all of these questions, then I started to sort of map it out and then I go, okay, right. So if it is that I do have kids, it would have to be with this guy, right? I'd write it down, the values, what he'd look like, all that sort of stuff. And seriously, it took me a while to get to a point where I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to meet him. And 3 weeks later, Adam comes out of nowhere and then we start talking and one thing that brought us together was this vision of him saying, because he started talking about him being an entrepreneur. Mind you, that's actually what scared me. The only thing that he said to me was that he was an entrepreneur. And to me, that was like red flags. That calls his instability, you know, like that. Yeah. So that scared me, but everything else was the right things, like his values, what he was about. He was such a caring person. If he had kids, and because I'd known him for a very long time, I knew he was really good with kids and I knew that he wanted them and he was this nurturing person, and he was a nurturing person in itself, and that's what I needed, right, in a relationship, someone that would nurture me and all that sort of stuff. And then when he said, my dream is to live anywhere, and this is where the entrepreneurship then kicked in, because he was like, oh, I'd love to live in Barcelona for 6 months. And I had written that down. I wanted to live somewhere else, and I love Barcelona, and I had written that down. To me, it was like, I want that too. Oh my gosh, you know, this? And he goes, yeah, this is what entrepreneurship could look like. And I was like, freedom. I want that freedom-filled life. And then he then sort of started to bring in this entrepreneurship freedom-filled life that I wanted and that I wanted for me and my family. And then that was it. That was the moment that he got me, and we started dating. And then probably maybe 2 years into our relationship. Look, at that point, to be honest, let's be honest here. He asked me, "Do you want to have kids?" This was the first time that someone had asked me, and I was able to respond in a non-awkward way. Because when other guys would ask me, I'd get really awkward about it. I would say the wrong things and all that sort of stuff. And this is the first time I actually said, if we're actually really happy in a couple of years, let's say, right? Like we look at each other and we're like, we're really, really happy. We have our values, we have, all that sort of stuff in place, and we're ready for it, emotionally, financially, and we're good. And just clearly, I just want to be happy. Then yes, I will have kids, but that's all depending on that. I can't say yes until I know that in 2 years' time we look happy, right? And he was like, okay, no, that's good, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And then the 2 years was coming up, and at that point it was those moments where I was like, financially we're not there yet, and financially I was in a good salary as well, and I'm like, what happens if I go on maternity leave and then you're an entrepreneur? And then, all of these questions that started coming up. And then because that was really important to me, he then decided to go into corporate so that we could have kids financially and be that, And so we compromised, and I said, okay, you go back to corporate just so that we can just deal with the maternity leave and when I'm on maternity leave, and then I'll go back and then I'll financially support the family because I could with the money that, I earn. And then you can be an entrepreneur. And in my head, I was like, you can be the one that picks up the kids from school, drops them off, does the drop off, and you're an entrepreneur. So you'll have that freedom-filled life that you can do that for the kids. And I'll be this corporate financial woman that brings it all together in terms of finances, right? That was what I was thinking until I became a mum, until all that happened. And I was like, no, I want to be there for my kids too.
I knew that was going to come. All those feelings flood out, don't they, as soon as you have it's that maternal instinct. And it's going back into full circle of your own upbringing and that loss and all of those things you've been fighting for all your life, pretty much, right?
It's an identity shift. It really is. I think women, when they have kids, they go through it, right? It's a massive identity shift. Like they say, you end up becoming, or what do they say, a reborn? Like, you rebirth yourself as well. And all these emotions that you never knew even existed just come up. And then it becomes something that, either you sit there and figure it out and work towards, or either you sit there, figure it out, and you just stay the same, right? Like, I mean, there's two options here. And I think that when we decide to just sort of go with the flow, it catches up with us, I think. That's what I want to sort of awaken when I do talk about my experience. And sometimes it does come down, like you said, sometimes it's that purpose, that pain that then builds it onto that purpose, right? I went through the hospital experience with my daughter, and it was 2 years of going back and forth of the hospital, and we experienced that. And that was our awakening. But some women or some people will never experience that big pain or that trauma, that they may never know. However, they might feel in different ways, and not until you tell your story. And I think this is the beauty of platforms like this, right? And platforms like podcasts. You tell the story for others to feel it and go, that doesn't have to happen to me, but I also feel like I'm not living to my purpose.
Yeah. You just said about going to back and forth between back to the hospital. What was that about?
Yeah, so when Jasmine was 6 months old, and look, even before she was 6 months old, I remember Adam and I were always anxious about something, that something just didn't seem right. And, when you have a baby and, you go through all the milestones and she's ticking those milestones, but outside of the milestones, it's like when you're at home with her, something just felt off. And we kept on kind of being on the lookout. It was just these things that she would do in terms of like sometimes she'd just stare into space and like her eyes would just go in to a different world, and you kind of would I gotta have to be feeding her. I'd be like, Jasmine, Jasmine, and like snap out of it kind of thing. She'd just go into these different little worlds, and while we were bathing her, she'd always sometimes go stiff. So there was this weird thing happening with her body, right? And for us it was a neurological. We were like, is there something, and so every single time I'd go to the nurse and bring it up, and they're like, oh, that's normal, that's newborns are really funny and weird, and they are, right? But there was just something to it. And then when she was 6 months old, we started to give her solids. So the second day that I gave her solids and I gave her pear, we were bathing her, and then she had these really stiff moments where she really just locked up, and it looked like she was sort of having a seizure, like her eyes were sort of rolling back, and we were like, that was not normal. And so, okay, we were like bathing her and did all that, and then got her into bed, and as soon as we laid her into bed, she just vomited everywhere, like piles of things. So we're like, okay, this isn't normal. So because of the stiffness and the way that she was looking, and she went sort of limp, we took her straight to the emergency, and we got into the car. Both of us were obviously with her. Got into the emergency, and as I went to give her over to a nurse, she was started to vomit, and as she's vomiting, she had this moment where she sort of stiffened up. Straight away they were like, seizure, 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 and so they took us into a seizure room, and so they had to put all these things into her body. I've got a photo that came up just recently actually about it, and it was just so traumatic for us. It was just like, wow, like all these things on her. What is going on? What is this that she has? Is it a neurological thing? I was just thinking the worst, seizures and all that sort of stuff. Is it epilepsy? You start to Google things, and all of a sudden you go into this Google thing that takes you to all these places. And long story short, they did all of the tests, the neurological one, which is the brain, the heart. We were there for 24 hours, and they come back and they were just like, okay, so what she has is it's what is it called, reflux. We were like, reflux? This is no, no, everything's clear. It's different type of reflux and all that sort of stuff. So just go home, and what you're going to have to do is just monitor, blah, blah, blah. And then so we're like, what kind of reflux is this? Like, it's silent reflux, because she's not a crybaby. Like, she wasn't crying all the time. Anyway, so long story short, every 3 weeks it was happening. Every 3 weeks she would have these like moments where, and so we took her to the pediatrician, and again, it was COVID. During COVID time, it was really difficult to find a pediatrician, and it was stressful because we were like, we know this is not just reflux, and we need help, and we need to know what this really is. So I went into massive research and all that sort of stuff, and I came up with something called Sandifer syndrome, and it was something that it wasn't well known, but it was in the US, and I found some stuff on Sandifer syndrome, but all the symptoms was what she had. And I was like, Adam, she must have this Sandifer syndrome thing, and it is like a reflux GERD thing, but it comes with all these neurological kind of things that happen, and so she must have that. But every single time she would have it every 3 weeks, it was scary. It was scary because she would just go limp, and when she'd vomit, it was a lot. So dehydration was one thing, and we actually called the ambulance like 2 or 3 times, because we were like, she's dehydrated, she was going limp, and she wasn't responsive half the time. So it was just a really odd thing to go through. And when eventually we got to the pediatrician, like maybe 3 months later, she then said, yeah, she's got Sandifer syndrome, and it is scary. It is one of those things that, it's good that we found out, because some of it goes really unseen, because of the moments that when it does happen, pediatricians will always ask for a video, like send us a video or whatever. And it happens so quickly, you don't have time to, take it out. But for us, it was lucky that when she did have it for the very first time, a nurse saw it, right? So it was seen. But another thing that we had to deal with as well, and why we ended up in hospital for a week, was because she was losing a lot of weight. And that wasn't normal, because she was throwing up every 3 weeks and all that sort of stuff. And because of her reflux, she wasn't eating enough And we as parents were scared to feed her because every single time we'd feed her, it's like, is it going to happen again? So there's a lot of anxiety that we dealt with as newly parents. And then it stopped when she was 14 months old. She had a medication. We had to constantly take her on medication, constantly have her at a pediatrician to get her checked to make sure that her weight was okay and all that sort of stuff. And then at 14 months, it stopped because the pediatrician said it will stop eventually. Like, sometimes it goes until they're 2 years old, right?
Yeah,
so at
wow.
14 months, it stopped. I remember thinking that bit by bit, it was getting a little bit better and better and better and better. 14 months, it stopped. Then the month after that, then she ended up with some other random thing that ended us in hospital again, septic arthritis. So she was complaining about her shoulder. We were in Sydney visiting my brother, and she was complaining about her shoulder, being really fussy. Everything hurt. So as soon as we got home, took her to the doctor. The doctor was like, straight to the emergency. And we went to the emergency. We were there overnight, and they were like, what she has is septic arthritis. We have to operate on her. We have to have surgery. And that was the day that we realized that after going back and forth from hospital, all these tests and all that sort of stuff, this was another thing that I had to call and it had ended, right? So then it's like a new thing. I had to call my manager and tell her, we're at the hospital again. And I just felt like, oh my God, for like this to happen again, it's like, will they think I'm lying? Will they think you start to question all these things? Like, and I was getting treated obviously differently because I was barely around and I had to work from home, and everyone was wanting to get back. COVID had finished and all that sort of stuff. Everyone wanted to get back into the office. And I'm always giving these excuses that because she had Sandoff syndrome, I wanted to be there. I wanted to be home. And so I
shouldn't have to feel guilty.
Yeah, I kept pushing back, going, I don't want to go into the office. Like, she's got this thing. And I don't know if like my mother-in-law is going to be able to deal with it. What happens if she goes limp? Like all these things that, I wanted to just be there for her. And then this happened. And again, I pushed back going into the office. So all this pushing back of wanting to be just there for her versus the paycheck. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't happy with the work that I was doing anyway. It was just a paycheck. I had to really think about that. I was like, am I even really making a difference? Am I really making an impact with what I'm doing in my corporate job? Do I really care for it? And again, it comes to asking yourself these questions like, what am I doing this again for? A paycheck. Okay. Yeah. The money's good. But does it equal happiness, and does it equal like the sacrifice that I'm having with my daughter that's going through a really tough time, and all I'm thinking about is showing up for work? And then that day that she went into surgery, I'll never forget, it was heartbreaking seeing a 15-month-old going into the room where she's about to go under, like anesthetic, right? And Adam and I were talking about it, and then, we're like, who's going to go in and who's not going to go in and all that sort of stuff. And it was him that took her in. I was just in this room by myself, crying and thinking, now she's going in. Now I need to call my manager and tell her that I'm here and that I've got a project happening. And there's all these deliverables because I'm a project manager, and I know this needs to happen. It was a big project that I was running, and I have to call her. And so I cried quickly, and then I had to just get on the phone and say, hey, this is what's happening again. I'm at the hospital. I've stayed here overnight because it was an overnight thing. So this was like, 7, 8 in the morning, that I had to really go into that moment of thinking, gosh, is this really happening? Like, why am I feeling so bad and guilty for being here, and having to call my manager again, telling her that, I have to then put everything on pause. But does that even matter? Like, someone else is going to take care of it. She can take care of it. Like, it's not a big deal. And then Adam comes back from, dropping her off, and he was like, I've got to get on a call for a big client thing that he had to go, and he was working, I don't know if it was at DocuSign at that point, but corporate, right? Because we were doing it for the money and the finances. And I was like, this is crazy, Adam. What are we doing? We have to change this. Like, we can't even be present for her. We can't even take the moment to really like to cry and grieve about what's happening right here, right now. And you're thinking about a client call, and I'm thinking about calling my manager. I'm like, nah, this has to change.
What
And
did
so
your
that was it.
manager say on that call? Sorry.
She was like, look, completely like, just be with her. Obviously, they couldn't do much about it because it was the moment that I was in hospital, and like,
Mm.
gosh, but over time, because I still had to go into all these tests because septic arthritis meant that we had to keep an eye on the fluids,
Yeah.
and making sure that everything was taken out. And there was a lot of blood tests that came with it. So she was there for, I think, 4 days. And then after that, every like, I don't know, I think month, we had to then get checked. So I had to take her to the hospital. So it wasn't that moment that she obviously was like, okay, well, no, be there with her. I'll take care of everything. It was the aftermath of that. It was just like every single month I'd have to be calling and saying, I've got to take her to another test and another test. And eventually it was just like, can't Adam do that? Or can't your mother-in-law do that? Or, why do you always have to do that? Like, why does it, can't someone else sort of take it? So it was just the aftermath of all those tests that I was like, I knew I had to take her and I wanted to be the one to take her. Yeah, sure, we could take her, but I'm the mum. Like, I want to be there, and again, it
Yeah.
comes from my own past of like not having my mum around because she had to work. And I'm like, I don't want that for my girls. I want to be there and I want to be the one that's comforting them when they're getting their blood tests done. And I was pregnant at that point. So when that happened, when Jasmine went into surgery, I was 10 weeks pregnant.
Ugh.
So that then made it even more clicky, right? Like I wanted to be there for Jasmine because I'm like, well, I'm about to have a baby
Yeah.
and I'm about to not be there for Jasmine because all of a sudden I'm going to have a baby. So I had this sense of mum guilt also,
Yeah.
knowing that I just wanted to be there for her before even baby number 2 arrived, that then
Of
would
course.
take me away from
Yeah.
her. And
Mhm.
and I didn't want my work to get in between. And yeah, that's where I was like, with my second baby, this isn't happening. I said, Adam, when I go on maternity leave, let's make this work. Let's start a business, and I'm not going through this again. I don't want to have to choose, or have been felt that way, that I had to sort of get someone else or outsource
Yeah.
taking my daughter to a doctor's appointment.
And that's when the businesses were born.
Yeah,
Full
that's
circle.
it. Yeah, that's it.
I love that.
That
Yeah, I
is
love it.
it.
In a way, I'm kind of glad you're one of billions of people that comes across all these egotistical leaders who don't understand their own purpose. They don't even live with purpose themselves, or at least we can't imagine they do. They obviously have their own journey, but they don't share their story, right? So we can never understand them.
Yeah.
We can only go off the judgment that they're presenting to us, and that's those type of phone calls that you're receiving, and it's sinking into your own. And then, you're 10 weeks pregnant. If you're stressful, shit can go wrong.
Yeah.
Because of what you're going through on a daily basis. So I'm glad you made that change, right? And
Yeah.
that in that moment goes back to that quote that I said at the beginning. That change is staying the same is going to be harder than making the change, right? So
That's right.
absolutely. Before I remember, I love how that's done a full circle, by the way. I really, really do. Before I do come to the close, though, Evelyn, we said in a pre-chat, and I've done it in big capital letters because I want to kind of bring it up because I think it's kind of cool. And I don't know if you know what I'm going to bring up here, but I'm just going to say one word: signs. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes. Wow. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Can we touch on that before I close this down? Because I think this is important and I think it's beautiful and yeah.
Absolutely. So let's start off with the sign, the initial first sign. So I'm very spiritual, and and I think that I've manifested a lot of things in my life, and I believe in manifestation. And one of the things that even when I was younger, I'd always ask, I'd pray to God, and I'd be like, oh, can you just send me a sign from my mum? Can you, I'd pray so much to want to see my mum at some point. Anyways, when Adam and I got together, Adam probably 3 weeks later, he woke up one night and he's like, babe, I think I saw, I don't even think I told you this, Andy, but when we're talking about signs, that's where it actually started. He's like, babe, I think I just saw your mum. And this was like 3 weeks when, we were, and he woke up to it. And I was like, what do you mean you saw your mum? Like, my mum, it's like, yeah, she was just standing at the end of our bed. I was like, what does she look like? And at that point, I didn't even think I had even, he had even seen a photo of her because I was living by myself. So I didn't have photos of her. Like, it wasn't like I had a photo of her lying around or anything like that. And he described her to a T. Like, this is what she was
Whoa.
wearing, necklace, this and that, blah, 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 curly hair, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, got me chills, right? I was like, wow, that's really,
Huh.
really cool. Like, that's
Yeah.
interesting because, yeah, it sounds like her. And then I showed him a photo. And it's like, that's exactly what I imagined her to look like, right? And so that then started. And so that to me meant something. I was like, she's obviously trying to tell me something. This is the guy, this is the guy that's going to change my life, whatever, right? And then, this year, like I mentioned, has been the really, really difficult year of rebuilding something big for both of us, I think. And when you're building something big where you think that this is going to be a big thing, it's going to change people's lives. And, even, Sales Command is there to also impact businesses and grow businesses. And for me, it's impacting other women's lives to believe that they can actually make an impact and do what we do and all that sort of stuff. So then we were going through a really tough time. And I said to Adam, do you think it's time? And again, it was a financial thing. It was my scared of finances because I had my finances together, my whole life. And this is one thing that I really need to break through was the finances part because my whole life I had been working so hard to financially be independent. So I didn't have to worry about anyone. No one else had the money for me, right? I had to be that person. And so when it came to building a business, all of a sudden it was like going into debt. And I've never been into debt. So that was one thing that I just never wanted to get into. But
Mm.
it's good debt, right? So the mindset that I had to sort of work on was, well, we're building something big. It's going to take time. It's not going to be overnight. We're going to have to go into a bit of debt using credit cards and all that sort of stuff. So we applied for credit cards and, we started to sort of go through that journey. And I started to get really uncomfortable at the start of this year, going, I don't know if I can do this. Like, Adam, maybe you need to go back to corporate. Maybe you're going to have to go back. And
No.
then he's like, Ev, like, you don't understand. This business could be something big. Like, you got to think bigger. You got to think, and because I'm not an entrepreneur, like, I've never done this before. It's like taking risks. It really is about taking risks. I prayed to my mum. I was like, Mum, give us a sign, please. Like, if there's anything that, and I kept on hearing meditation, like, money will come, money will come, money will come. Anyways, I prayed to her one night, and the next day I received money into my account randomly, right? And it was like money that I never even thought I would get because it was like a childcare subsidy thing that they stuffed up and then they fixed or something like that. And then I realized that I had a message that I hadn't ever received in my MyGov saying that the subsidy was wrong, calculated wrong, and the money was sent to my account. But for me, that was a sign. That was my first sign going, okay, Mum, you've told me, let's just keep going. Money will come. Money will just come. And that's not a problem. And so then the next part that we got into another really difficult situation where we had a co-founder, but then he stuffed us up. And then we went into this, he took money from us because we had clients. Anyways, this is another story in itself. Again, I was like, what is this trying to tell us? And I'm like, Mum, like, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing? And so another thing happened where my brother and I were talking about childhood and the purpose behind everything that we're doing. And I said, gosh, it's really, really hard. Like, it really is hard to think about all the sacrifices that we're making. And then I think about the sacrifice that my mum made. She had to go backwards to go forwards. And, I'm like, that's what it feels like I'm doing right now. As a 40-year-old, I'm doing it. When she was 40, it's like we're going backwards. We're giving everything away, everything that we built so hard for to build a better life. And that's what she did. And so here I am feeling like, how does she do it, right? Like, and then there was a balloon that my daughter had for her 4th birthday, and it was just sitting there, not inflatable, but like it was just sitting there for 2-3 weeks. And all of a sudden, as I'm talking to my brother about this, thing, the balloon starts moving from one side, no wind, no nothing, like there was nothing, from one side of the apartment to the other. And it was moving forward. And so I said to my brother, did you see that? Like, we both freaked out. And he was like, is that weird that we're talking about like moving forward? Like, I'm like, yes, we got to keep going, got to keep going. And yeah, it was just one of those moments. And then the third time where again, I was just trying to figure out, give me another sign, are we doing the right thing? And I was looking at my date of birth and it was, numbers, like there's something about numbers at the moment. Looking at my date of birth and numbers, 4th or 5th, and then I looked at the time that I was born, 8 p.m., and I was like, well, I wonder what that means, 8 p.m. And then apparently 8 is a good number. Apparently it's like a lucky number, like 8 and 4s or whatever. And then
My favorite
anyways,
number.
yeah, yep, just like 8 p.m. was like, okay, 8. And then Adam's like, Ev, come have a look at this. And I'm like, what? And it's like my mum's photo, and there was like a rosary that was hanging over her photo, started to dangle, going from one side to another. And I was like, okay, that means good luck. Like, I think that's what I was thinking when I saw 8. I was like, oh, I think that means good luck. And then it was just another sign of her just saying, yes, just keep going, just keep going. So I've lived this year in fear of like what could be, of taking massive risks, of believing, trusting in us, trusting in Adam, trusting in myself that we can make this work, that we're building the foundations of something big. And my mum has given us many signs throughout to just say, just keep going.
And I hope you're listening to her.
Yeah.
And listening to yourself and Adam as well.
Yeah, we are. It reminds us to just trust and back ourselves. And yeah, that's one thing that I've learned this year.
So with the fear in mind leads to my one of the 3 final questions perfectly. Yes. And I asked this question because just because we're here on Leading Our Own Way doesn't mean we've made it, doesn't mean it's stopped. You've just highlighted that yourself anyway. What are your future plans? Because everyone needs to see that we're having a great discussion. We've gone through the hardships, and we probably will go through more.
Yes.
We definitely will go through more. Yes. But what are your future plans?
Writing a book. So
love it.
Yeah, my main thing about this whole thing and my whole journey, and the Legacy Building Mamas podcast is to tell the story. And once we've figured out, or once we get to, again, like you said, you never figure it out, right? It's just when I feel like I'm ready and go, yeah, this is what I want to teach, and we've mastered it, we've cracked the code, and we know exactly what works, what doesn't work. And I'm going to be writing a book to tell our whole journey, our whole story about all of this and what that all leads to if you just keep trusting yourself.
Love it. Anyway, I want a copy on here though. I've got a few of my guest books on here, so.
Oh, amazing. I'll sign it. And we'll definitely do another podcast on my book launch.
Yes. Love that. What was did you say a title? Have you got a title?
Not yet. I definitely.
Working title?
And there's so many different ideas that I've got, and I think it won't be just one book. There's different things that you could write on when it comes to following this journey. It has to be disruptive. It's like it could even be who's raising our kids. It could be about that. Who's raising our kids, and how to take that control back, and essentially I want to make that book a movement of going, okay, if you really do care about like raising your kids, the only way is to start a business, and this is how we did it, kind of thing. So but again, it could be different. It could be about other things. There's so many different angles that we could take it.
And for anyone who's listening, you should definitely tune into Adam's episode also after this, because we talk at the end about a school and the type of school I think he would like to create as well.
Yes.
And I'm the man for the job, by the way, because I've already built a school with somebody. So
that's amazing. Yeah, we've got to keep in touch. There's so many synergies here.
Definitely. If you could give a piece of advice, you've given some very beautiful insights throughout this entire episode, but if there's one piece of powerful general advice that you could give based on our topics and based on our discussion today, what do you think that could be?
The advice is, my main advice would probably be, if you see someone else do it, right? And you think to yourself, oh, but it's okay for them to do it because they have the confidence, or they're lucky because they've just got it in them. I would rethink that and say, no, you can do it. You're not born with confidence. No one is born with confidence, and no one is born with I've got it. We all struggle with different things, but mainly I think the same things. It's imposter syndrome. I think we all have imposter syndrome. So my advice to you is actually, instead of putting that as an excuse to not do it, seek advice from the people that have done it before. And if you actually do want to get to a point where you could be that person, because you could, anyone could be that person. If you're looking at someone going, that person really inspires me, be that person, because you can inspire someone else that needs you and what you've got and your lived experience. So don't forget that you could also be that person too.
Absolutely. And my add-on to that is what I've done there is I've tried to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's where my steps have got bigger and bigger and wider, and I've become more creative, but obviously looked at how I live healthy as well. I think if I can get that homeostasis, that cellular level balance, I've then got the resource to take it even further. But if I'm ever below that balance, that level line of where our baseline should be as a human, then we're always going to be depleting. We're never going to be successful, you know?
That's right. It's a muscle, right? Like every single action that you take then creates that muscle to then just keep going. And I think trust comes from that.
Yeah, and that's when you access your intuition more, because you've got those, when you're at least baseline what the body and mind needs, you've got these extra materials, nutrients in the body that are left there as resources essentially.
Yeah.
And if you access them in a healthy way, I think that's when you hit that next paradigm of, well, my intuition, that's probably why you saw those signs, you know, and all of that. Anyway, we could talk about that side of it as well for a very long time. To finish off, it's pretty clear what your purpose is, but if you can put it into one simple line, what is your purpose, Evelyn?
My purpose is to live my life like it's my last. So every day I wake up, I think, is this the kind of life that I want to live if it's my last? And I wake up now thinking, I love what I do. And my real purpose really centers on empowering and supporting women to also do the same, because I know what I've been through, and everything that I guess we talked about today really comes down to how would anyone else live their life in purpose, right? So it all comes down to just empowering other women to build a life, and I guess think about redefining what success looks like. So my purpose is really to empower women to redefine success on their terms, build purposeful-led, profitable businesses while they honor their family and their own values, because really it comes down to honoring your own values and focusing on what makes you happy. How would you live your life on a day-to-day basis? By living through your values. Let's stop hiding behind the mask. Let's stop hiding behind what societal norms actually tell us to be, and step into the powerful women that we need to be to live life on purpose, to live life on our terms. And that's my true purpose.
That's it.
Yeah.
Love it. Evelyn, what a beautiful episode. Thank you for an amazing chat. I know loads of people will be able to take pieces and gems of every other second on this episode, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me on my journey, and it's been an absolute honour.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honoured to be here, Andy, and I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Same goes. We'll stay in touch. You won't be able to get rid of me, you and Adam, now, but we'll have to all catch up as a family and maybe have a coffee and some dinner or whatever. And I'm hopefully organised. By the time this goes out, we won't be too far away from 100 episodes. So we'll hopefully get together and do a bit of a ceremony. That's my plan anyway. So hopefully we can make it happen.
I would love that. I'd love to celebrate with you and definitely get our families together.
Definitely. We should have done something for your 100th episode. We can still do it.
I know, right? Oh, I'm just going to jump onto yours and just double.
We can do that.
Celebration. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't take your limelight.
No, I don't care. I'm not about stuff like that. Beautiful. Thank you for joining me this evening. And probably people will listen to it in the mornings on the car on the way to work. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Go and get some sleep. But yeah, thank you. And from everybody else who's joined us on this episode, make sure you keep coming back every single week for another amazing guest. But until next week, from Evelyn and myself, have a great week and keep leading your own way.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
What a journey we've been on with Evelyn today and this week, for that matter, for the two parts. From El Salvador to Australia, from corporate life to entrepreneurship. From the depths of uncertainty to the heights of purpose-driven success. Her story is a masterclass in resilience, authenticity, and the courage to trust yourself when everything feels uncertain. Evelyn's reminder that comes from within, not from external validation or material possessions. It's something we all need to hear. Her ability to turn childhood pain into purpose and to build businesses while raising children, right? It's hard. And to stay true, though, to herself and to her values while scaling her impact. That's what leading your own way is all about. Thank you, Evelyn, for sharing your heart, your struggles, and your wisdom with us today. Your story and the platforms that you've built will undoubtedly inspire countless others to trust their own journey and lead with purpose. And to you, our incredible Leading Our Own Way community, thank you for joining us for another powerful journey. Next week, we're back with another inspiring story, I like to say journey, of someone who dared to forge their own path. Until then, though, keep leading your own way, keep trusting your journey, and remember, your story has the power to change lives. I'm Andrew White, and this has been Leading Our Own Way. See you next week. Thanks for listening and watching Leading Our Own Way. So we can stay together forever and share more incredible journeys, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss next week's episode and what that amazing guest has to offer to the world. Please support Leading Our Own Way, and we'll get you on next week's episode.